Hey, it's me, author H.L. Burke, and this is the first in my series, Deliberating Dragons. And now that I say that title, I'm really regretting that I chose the word deliberating because it is a word that I'm going to mangle at some point. Deliberating. It's going to happen. But anyway, this is a series in which I talk about things that either inspire me or could inspire you if you would like to write speculative fiction and you are looking for some ideas. So some of them will be things that I will have used for inspiration in my books, and some of them will be things that I will plan to use someday, and some are just things that I find cool. And I thought I'd start with some easy ones. So the first one I'm doing is 5 inspirational locations that either inspired something in my work, or I plan to use in my work, or I just find so cool that they really need to be included. All right, and the first one's kind of a quaint little one. It's Clints Booksellers in my hometown of The Dalles, Oregon. And it's this cute little bookstore. It's been around since 1870, which for Oregon is a very long time. I know if you're from Europe or England, any place other than the US, probably 1870 does not seem that long ago. But when you're in Oregon, where most of the buildings don't date back that far, 1870 is a long time ago. And it's just this cute little store, and it's really quirky and really crowded. They've changed the way it looks inside several times, but it always has that really old book smell. And every time I think of like a quaint old store, even if that store doesn't sell books, I think of Clints. Now, I do have a backup for number 5, one that almost made the list instead, and that one is also a bookstore and also in my native state of Oregon. And that would be Powell's, just because Powell's itself is so crazy cool. If you go in there, you can get lost. And the reasons Clints makes it and Powell's doesn't is Clints has a lot more character, if you ask me. Powell's is kind of in a more modern building, but I love it anyway. It's still pretty cool. And that's my number 5. And that would inspire pretty much any store in my universes. I kind of try to get that feel of walking into Clints. Now, the next one on my list has the distinction of being the only one I have never been to but would like to go to somewhere. Every place else on this list I have been, and it's also the only one outside of the Pacific Northwest, I just realized looking at my list. And I have been other places besides Oregon. I've even been to Japan, so I have been outside the US, in fact. But for some reason, Oregon just has, I think I've got the most roots there, and when I think about places, that's what I think about. But anyway, this one is not in Oregon, and I have never been there, and it is Petra, and it's in Jordan. And I'm pretty sure most people would know it, but I was actually surprised at how many people don't know what I'm talking about when I say about this. I'm like, well, it's the place that's in The Last Crusades, right? The Indiana Jones movie. And they're like, huh? And I'm like, the scene in the canyon with the temple and there's a temple literally carved into the rock. It's a real place. And they're like, what? And I'm like, well, okay. Versus my cat who's here. But anyway, I love that place, and it's just so beautiful with the red rock and how you've got this stark cliffs, and you come and there's these like full-on temples carved right into the side of the rock, and I think that is the most interesting looking location that you could ever have, and I have been in love with that since I saw in Indiana Jones' Last Crusades, which is still my favorite Indiana Jones movie. Raiders of the Ark is good and all, but Indiana Jones and The Last Crusades is my favorite. Okay, moving on. My 3rd inspirational location is Little Crater Lake. And I know a lot of people know about Crater Lake, which is a big lake. And I think it's the deepest lake in the United States. You would probably have to fact check me on that. And I know that there are different ways to say that, but I think it claims that title anyway. But Little Crater Lake, while not as big and not as deep, is this amazing location. And it's up by Lake Timothy, which is a much bigger lake, which I believe is man-made. I think it's caused by damming up a river. But anyway, you go on this path, and you're just walking through what's basically a grassy field. And there's trees on the horizon and things, and just grassy field. All of a sudden, there's this blue pool that just opens up into the earth, and it just sinks down for I want to say 40 to 50 feet. And so the pool, it has like this massive drop off. Like for the first 3 feet, it's like maybe 1 or 2 feet deep, and then it just goes down. And there's a geological reason for how this happened. I'm not going to go into there, but you can look it up. Just look up Little Crater Lake, Oregon. It's in the Mount Hood National Forest. And just like the big crater lake, it has this amazing pristine water that's really, like, you can see right down to the bottom, and you can see the trees that have fallen into it down there. And there's no fish or anything because it's is landlocked the proper term for a lake? I don't know, but it doesn't connect to any larger bodies of water where fish can get there. But it's this perfect blue color. And I use this as the inspiration in Call of the Waters for the Evermere, which is the gate to the water world, sorry, Kevin Costner, to the water realm, the elemental realm of water. And I just love that image of you walking across a grassy field, and all of a sudden the earth drops away from you and you're staring into this pool of pristine blue. Okay, my next one is also in Oregon. 3 of these are, and one of them is in Washington. So let's see if knowing that there's Oregon and Washington coming up, if you can guess these. If you can guess, just let me know in the comments. But the next one I have is Oneonta Gorge. And this place is, I used to hike up and down like maybe once a year. It's in the Columbia River Gorge, but there's this really narrow gorge of these huge, I think, basalt walls on the other side, and they're covered in moss. And the creek at the bottom is not very big, Oneonta Creek. It's not deep. I think it fills the bottom of the gorge during, melting season. But in the height of summer, you can walk down, and there's only few places where the gorge gets so narrow that you'll have to probably wade through it. But there's usually stone on the other side, and in those places it gets a little bit deep, but not much above waist deep usually. And it's cold water even in the height of summer because the shadow in this gorge, because the gorge is not that far across. Some places you can probably man-span it across. It's like, I'll put some pictures in here. And then at the end there's this beautiful waterfall, and there are upper falls. I don't think I've ever actually made the trek to the upper falls, but Oneonta is probably one of the most beautiful places. I haven't used it in the book yet, but to me, the eerie location of how narrow the walls are together and the water being so cool and pure, it's just the perfect place. And finally, we have Mount St. Helens. Now, to me, this is just the ultimate as far as the destructive power of nature, and then also the healing power of nature and how it can fight back and grow. I was already born, I was born a couple years after Mount St. Helens originally erupted. Well, not originally, it had done it before that, but the big one, everybody talks about it. And so by the time I was around, it was already this huge smoking crater. But by the time I went there as a young adult, the trees had started to grow, the grass and stuff had started to grow back, and it's just beautiful. But you have this huge, massive, what was once this perfect cone-shaped mountain that now has turned into this like gaping crater, and there's trees knocked over like matchsticks. And I've used this in a couple ways. In my last book of my Dragons Curse series, the Dragon and the Scholar series, Dragon's Bride, I chose a hollowed out mountain that would very much resemble the Mount St. Helens crater as the home of the Dragon Queen. And I also used it for inspiration when I was looking into how the land would grow back after the Fire Elemental War in Lands of Ash, and what plants would come back first and what animals, and I kind of looked at that as inspiration because it's just amazing to me how things can grow back after such absolute destruction. Anyway, so I've always been inspired. I love, especially when I was younger, I loved geology. I liked volcanoes. I liked Vesuvius and Pompeii and all those terrible stories about people getting buried alive. But yeah, so those are my top 5 inspirational locations, and I hope that you enjoyed them, and I would like to see what inspires you and what locations you like to see in fantasy novels.